If you have over $200,000 sitting stagnant in your bank, retirement account, or home equity, then you're literally losing money. On this show, you learn how to get that money working for you consistently and conservatively. Learn to grow your nest egg with your host, Shawn Winslow. Let's dive in.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Multifamily Money Podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Winslow, and I've taken a little break, as those that are avid listeners probably know. Sometimes life comes at you. Had acquired or was in the process of acquiring 2 deals, and life, man, got married and went on a honeymoon. All that on top of just everyday thing. And I want to always put out quality content for you all, both from the solo episodes that I put out and also the interviews. And more on the interview side, I just wasn't getting the quality of guests I really would have liked. I just don't want to put out an episode just to, hit my weekly number, right? I actually want to bring guests that are going to provide value to you. So I took a step back, decided to just really go after getting good guests. And I've got a backlog in the tank ready to, put out here, that some really great guests, have some lined up that I'll be interviewing over the next couple of weeks. So I'm really excited to share. And I also just took the time to kind of, think about the direction I wanted to take the solo episodes, what kind of information I wanted to share. I've gotten great feedback on those. Some people, enjoy those just as much, if not more, than the interviews. I understand everyone loves a good interview, hearing someone's story of success. I love that. But I also think it's important to share what I've learned, maybe whether it's from experience or research I've done on important topics, especially timely important topics. So I'm excited to share more of that. But yeah, so today I'm going to get into a solo episode. And as you can see by the title, I want to share what I've learned on my journey in real estate investing. By the time this airs, we will have acquired over $50 million of real estate at the age of 34. I've been in finance almost 10 years now, or actually over 10 years now, coming up on 12 years, excuse me. So, and in real estate from one capacity or another for, 8 years or so, and then solely focused on what I'm doing now for over 5 years. So that 50 million has kind of come over the last, 5+ years. And so I just wanted to share what I've learned and to help others on their journey, maybe not make the same mistakes I had, or maybe just reaffirm the decisions they've already made. So let's just get right into it. So number one, and I'm sure you've heard this, but it needs to be reiterated. This is not, a get rich quick scheme. Despite what you see on social media, you're not going to be cash flowing 6 figures year 1, 7 figures year 2. You're not going to live the Lambos and private jet life right out of the gate. Right now, can it happen in the future? Of course. But again, it all depends what you want to create in life. Right. But first and foremost, this is a get very rich slowly scheme, not a get rich quick scheme. And that's important to note. And if someone is selling you something, a get rich quick scheme, I'd be very hesitant and probably run the other way. That's not what this business is about. It's never what it's been about. And that is just important. You got to let time do the heavy lifting. That's how you make the money, right? Obviously you make solid decisions, solid investments based off of, your knowledge you've gained over time, sticking to your investment criteria, and being diligent. And then using time to do that heavy lifting to create that wealth over time. So that's lesson number 1. It's not a get rich quick scheme. You need to know that, especially when in the syndication world, if that's what you're doing. Don't think, you're going to do a couple of deals in the first year. If you do a couple of deals first, that's, clap right there, right? It's hard to do deals, especially in this market, especially when it's your first ones, you don't have a track record. But even if you knock it out of the park and do a couple of deals in your first year, you're still, it's not going to be, hey, I made it, right? It's from a syndication standpoint, you don't really make the majority of the money you make as a syndicator, as a sponsor, as an operator, is on the back end. Once you've, completed the deal, gone full cycle. And that makes sense. That's the way it should be. You're taking investor money on, right? So you shouldn't get paid until you've complete the job. Yes, there's acquisition fees. If you're a lead sponsor, there's, asset management fees, but those are small, right? The acquisition fee can be split amongst several partners. Even if it's not, that gets eaten up quick by operations. Trust me, especially if this is something that you're trying to scale, it gets eaten up quickly. And then the asset management fee is small until you really build the scale, right? 2%, is small on one deal, on 2 deals, on 3 deals. Now, once you have, a dozen deals generating millions of dollars in, revenue per year, and you get 2% of that, then that's when it starts to help. But that takes time, especially if you're not the lead sponsor out of the gate. Maybe you're only getting a portion of the asset management. Maybe you're not getting any of it. So you need to know that. And this whole thing that is being promoted of, passive income, leave your W-2, that's if you're an LP, right? And even as an LP, that's more passive, right? There's still a little diligence and work you have to do up front, obviously, reading the docs, doing due diligence on the sponsor, making sure they're a good operator, you're filling out your docs, buying your money. And then once you're in the deal, it's, checking in monthly and quarterly to make sure everything is good, right? So it's not completely passive. It is the closest or most passive of it all. But then leaving your job, as an LP, I wouldn't bank on that. And then at least not in the beginning, right? It takes time to build, like any type of investment, build a portfolio that creates a certain amount of cash flow and return that you need to do that. And then from a general partner perspective, don't think you're going to leave, your W-2 right out of the gate. Even if you do make a good chunk of coin, is that sustainable, right? You might have gotten a bunch of acquisition fees. Well, is that repeatable? And that gets another conversation of doing deals just to get fees. And that's not smart either. So on that front, I always say, wait a couple of years, make sure this is something that's sustainable, that's repeatable, that the income you're generating, not off of acquisition fees, but asset management fees and cash flow, is, I would say, 1.5 times what you're making from your W-2. I think that's safe. And that could take a few years. That might not be 2 years. That might be 3. It might be 4, it might be 5. And that's okay. It's smarter to do that than try to rush the process and then hurt yourself in the future. All right. Second thing I learned, asset rich and cash poor. And this kind of goes with the first lesson. You'll see that, right? That a lot of real estate investors their net worth will be huge, but they might not have a lot of liquid cash. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. The big one is just a lot of people are addicted to the game, me included. Like, you get some cash and you want to put it back to work. You want to find that next deal. You find the next deal and you put it to work, and now you're back to zeros, scrounging up pennies, saving for the next one. And then also it's just a capital intensive game, especially if you're buying C and B class assets, older assets that need money. You got to put money back into the deal, especially when you first acquire it, right? You're probably buying properties with deferred maintenance, and that's a good thing because that's how you can create value, but it's capital intensive out of the gate. You got to remind yourself of that. So back to my point of number one is that's another reason you don't leave your job right out of the gate, because you need to build a solid, stable cash flowing portfolio. And that's hard to do right out of the gate, especially if you're buying B and C class properties. And I mentioned this too in the last point, is that, it's going to be years as from a syndication model, it's going to be years before you really start seeing significant cash flow from your promote, right? You don't really see that till, depending on the market, like maybe in the last few years when things were like a rocket just taken off, like maybe you could flip a property in 2 years and make a good nut. But generally it's going to be generally around 5 years before. And hopefully in that time, you're also stacking other deals. So then it can just hit every year after that, right? Because that's how you want it to go. Your first deal, you're not going to exit for year 5. So it's going to take 5 years, but hopefully you got another deal in year 2, 3, and 4. So then year 6, that second deal hits, year 7, that third deal hits, so on and so forth. And that's really how you stack. And then you take that money and put it back to work again, asset rich, cash poor, because you're putting that money back to work. So that, that is important. And it's also important to know, like, building reserves. So you're putting the money to work, but you're also keeping reserves that you don't want to touch, because you never know what's going to happen. And your cash flow, to me, I've said this before, it can create a quality of life for sure. But a lot of it is there to weather your storms. So you shouldn't be spending it all. Like any storms that come, like in the current market, and that's important to have those set aside. So second thing I learned was asset rich and cash poor. Number 3, So if you're raising money for deals, if you're a syndicator raising any type of private money, any type of, investor capital to take deals down out of the gate, I would raise double, if not triple of what you're expected to raise. And what I mean by that, I should word it better. Your soft commits should be double to triple. Triple if you're first starting out. Maybe after a couple deals, it's double, but double. Your soft commits should be double your raise. So if your raise is $2 million, you should have soft commits at $4 million. Something always happens. There's always people that from the time they say they're going to commit to the time that wire funds, something happens, whether it's them maybe not being completely honest, or it's them wishful thinking they really want to do the deal, but they can't make it. Or I've seen it where they're committed and then, their wife wants their spouse, I shouldn't say wife or husband wants to buy a house. And then, they got to commit that money to that. That's something that recently occurred. That happens, right? Other things happen. Maybe stock market takes a hit and now they're, they just want to keep more reserves. It could be anything, right? So always raise double, or someone promises a certain amount and only can bring half of what they promised. There's tons of things that can happen. So starting out, raise double raise double to triple soft commits as the raise. And trust me, that will help. So if you need to raise $1 million, don't have $1 million in soft commits. Even if they're your best friends and family, you still can't count on that. Have soft commits at $2 million for that $1 million raise. Number 4, people are the hardest part. What I mean by that is most issues in any business, not just real estate, any business, is the people aspect. From employees. So from real estate, that could be on an operations standpoint, could be your staff, your property management, your construction management, your vendors, even investors, right? People are people, right? And that's where your issues usually stem from. And they're not necessarily big issues, could be small issues. And you have to be able to manage those issues, manage them well, be able to manage people. That's the biggest part of this game, especially from an operations standpoint of real estate, is managing people. You can buy the best asset in the best location for the best price with a great rate in terms, not overly levered, but you could have staff that could run that into the ground. With poor communication, not caring, not having accountability. And then if you don't have oversight on that and hire slow, fire fast. If you're not firing fast and getting the right team in there, they can run that property into the ground. We've had a property, didn't run it into the ground, but it was on its way. And we were lucky to catch it early on. And it was a personnel issue. They just didn't care, didn't jive with the property, had no accountability. Communication was poor. They weren't communicating with the construction management team, which then led to a bunch of vacant units that needed to be turned all at once. And there was no communication. We knew they were coming up. We were under the impression that a lot of them just needed, not a full turn and light turn, which you get done in, 24 hours or less, 24 to 48 hours. Whereas no, they all needed heavy turns and the construction management team wasn't ready for it. Stuff like that it usually comes down to personnel. And I cannot talk about communication enough. That's the next point. Communication. You can never over communicate. And that comes to all aspects. To brokers, you should be communicating what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like, how you should work with them, how you'd like them to work with you. Just over communicate everything. From your lenders, communicate everything. Be honest, transparent, communicate what you need, what you're looking for, what your business plan is. Because if you don't, they're just going to give you what they think is the best. And that might not be the best for your actual business plan. So over communicate. And that's when you're in a deal too. Just communicate with what's going on. Obviously your investors, over communicate, what you're looking for, what you're expecting to do, how you're going to communicate with them, the type of transparency you're going to give them, what they can expect, and then deliver on that. That's the biggest thing. Deliver on it. Your staff, from on-site staff to property management, construction management, over communicate. Cannot communicate enough. I cannot emphasize that enough. You got to communicate what you want, what you're looking for, and what you're expecting. And that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. This is how it's going to go. Obviously, we're here. We'll accept input of what you think can make it better. But until we make those changes, this is what we expect. And this is what you need to deliver on. And you need to emphasize there needs to be communication among the teams. And it's not him against her or us against them. It's we're a team and we win and lose together. Next point. A good real estate attorney is worth every penny. Another one I can't emphasize enough. You hear the fee out of the gate, what you're going to have to pay them. And when you first start, you're like, that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a good nut of what I could make on this deal. Right. But they're there to guide you in the right direction and save you money, if not make you money. One of our attorneys has actually negotiated a good chunk of money off a deal in mid negotiations. And without him, we saved $600,000. That's a lot of money. And I can just not emphasize what they can do for you. It's worth every penny. Again, like anything, you get what you pay for. Next, great deal, but terrible presentation people will not want to work with you. So a great deal, but a terrible presentation. Your presentation just sucks. People will not want to work with you. If you don't have confidence or you're not showing confidence or conviction in the deal, why should others? This is not just investors. Obviously, terrible presentation with no conviction, no confidence. People can be like, what's going on here? And that can take practice. Maybe that's, just how you present or speak. Well, you need to practice that because you need to have conviction and confidence, because then they're going to feed off that energy, whether it's there or not, right? They're going to feed off whatever energy you provide them. And that's not just investors. It goes to lenders too. If you're going to a lender, talk about a deal and you don't have confidence or conviction, then you're like, well, why should we take a risk, make a bet here if the person who we're betting on, yes, we're betting on the deal itself, but we're also betting on this operator because they're going to operate this project. If they're not bringing confidence or conviction, why should we? We're not going to take the risk. So that's important. Always have confidence and conviction. Obviously, it needs to come from a real spot, right? You shouldn't just, be like, I want to do this deal. Maybe it's not a good deal, but I'll show some confidence and conviction. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. You find a good deal and you need to scream from the mountaintops that you got a good deal. Next, buying existing assets with in-place income is a better place to start than development or vacant properties. I think this is important. This is where I started. I never had any inclination or desire to start with ground up development or buying a vacant property. There's so many things up in the air. So many things that could go wrong. So many factors that you can't even think of. And with no experience, why would you want to start out of the gate with that much risk? Especially if you're bringing on other people's money. That's a lot of risk. It just makes more sense to start with an existing asset that has occupancy, that's producing income, cash flowing. I would say I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even do an income producing property that has negative cash flow for your first deal. I think it's better to start with positive cash flow, unless you're doing some type of house hack, right? Or maybe it's not positive cash flow, but obviously that's where you're living, right? So it's reducing your cost of living. That's a different story. But from a pure investment standpoint that you're not living in, income producing asset that cash flows, that's the best place to start. It allows you to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes because you have that buffer to help you, especially the fatter the deal, the bigger the buffer to help you. And that's where I would start. And another point is you don't need to swing big early, right? I'm gonna talk on this point in a little bit, but you don't need to take the big hacks from the beginning. Yeah, you might see the potential money you can make, but is it worth the risk if you fail and it hurts your career for the future? Next, knowing your market or markets intimately. I cannot stress this one enough. Obviously, it seems like a no-brainer, right? But there's a lot of people they'll do like high-level demographic research, right? And say, oh, this, net migration, net positive migration, net positive job growth, companies are moving here, income is increasing, household income is strong, medium household value has been increasing. Yeah, that's all good. And you want to do that research 100%. And you want to make sure you're finding those markets, but that's just surface level stuff, right? You don't know where people want to live in that market, where they don't want to live in that market, where maybe a manufacturer is about to build a big building, which is going to gentrify a location. Maybe, you're underrating at 1,500 for a one bed. But little do you know that location, you're 2 blocks away from where you could get that, and in where that property is can't get that. You need to know these things, right? You need to know taxes, right? Like how, and yeah, you can do the research to find out how they increase, but when you know intimate knowledge, people that work for the government there, the municipality, you need to know, the likelihood of things of happening. And people with inside information just can act faster, right? And speed kills, speed kills in two ways. If you act fast with sound knowledge, great things can happen, and speed kills the other way when you can't act fast and you lose opportunities. So knowing a market inside and out, intimately can allow you to act faster than others, to seize on opportunities, because the good opportunities, they don't stay around long, right? Because other people that do have that intimate knowledge of their markets see them and get them. So that's important. And the best way to get intimate knowledge is just by time in that marketplace. Both physically and, talking to people, just getting to know that market. Next, relationships are key to success. You don't want to burn them just over a few bucks. And you hear this all the time. Like, for instance, with the broker, I'm going to beat this broker up to get their fee down so I can make more money. That word gets around. People might not want to work with you as much. Maybe you do that to a broker, and then, you're in best and final on another deal, and they think of that, and your offer's close. Maybe they don't award it to you because they remember that. And then the other group they give it to doesn't do that to them. So they're like, well, I'm going to give it to this group, and they're doing eat what they kill, right? There's a lot of risk they put out there, right? They're doing a lot of work, and they only get paid if it's closed, right? Don't burn bridges over a few bucks. And that goes to partners and investors, right? Referral is the best lead, right? Referral is the best type of sale. It's the easiest and best, right? Don't ruin relationships over a few bucks. It's not worth it. Not maximizing what you can make today doesn't hurt you in the future. If you're doing it for good reasons and building relationships, it's actually going to make you more in the long run. So remember that. Next, perception isn't reality. A lot of people living on debt, it's just their whole life is leveraged on debt, from loans to credit cards, financing cars and toys and homes, second homes, third homes, all of it. It's just a house of cards, right? Perception isn't reality. It's the whole, Instagram, social media thing, people showing you their highlights. So don't make emotional decisions based on that. And I call it the Lambo lease boys. So the Lambo lease boys, there's the ones that maybe they rent a Lambo or Ferrari for a day, take some pictures, create some content, or they take a picture in front of a private jet that they didn't pay for. Maybe they're with a wealthy buddy who paid for it, or they just so happen to be around one. There's actually crazy enough. There's places where you can actually go where it's like a set, pay a small fee, and you can take a picture like you're sitting in a private plane. It's absolutely insane. So perception isn't reality. Even people that buy these cars, I've heard of they're one bad flip away from not being able to afford the next payment, and then it gets repoed. So perception is not reality. Make sound decisions, smart decision for your financial future. Now, I'm not saying don't get the toys when you can afford them. No, I'm not saying that at all. I love that stuff, right? But don't force it. Do it when it's right. And next, I've kind of alluded to this in one of the previous ones, but there's nothing wrong with scaling slowly. There really isn't. Again, the perception isn't reality thing, social media, I'm a millionaire by 23. Like, it doesn't have to be you. You don't need to do it that fast. And sometimes doing it that fast is dangerous. It's better to learn to fail forward, right? Fail and learn from that and grow. So you don't make those mistakes again. Learn how to operate money, your finances, a business. There's nothing wrong with scaling slow. And scaling slow might mean not raising money, right? You don't have to syndicate. Not everyone is built to syndicate, to raise money. There's a certain level of responsibility and stress that comes along with managing other people's money. And not everyone's built to do that. I had a colleague who was raising money for a deal, and he literally broke out in hives raising the money. It was just so stressful being able to raise the money before closing. Others that, it's just stressful. And then going to sleep at night. Maybe something's not going great with the deal, and it's other people's money, right? And you got to answer to them. It's not meant for everybody. And there's nothing wrong with scaling slow. I'm actually interviewing someone today that I'm really excited about, who built a massive portfolio without any other people, no one else's money other than a bank loan, maybe some owner financing. Other than that, all the money is his. Scaling was all this individuals, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it took him a while to get to the size he is today. It's the snowball effect, right? Several years before he really had scale, and just snowballs. And now he has a massive portfolio that is owned entirely by him and his family. And he's in control over it. He doesn't have to worry about answering to anyone else or the stress of having other people's money in the deal. There's nothing wrong with scaling slowly. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to go on social media and shout from the hilltops that, I went from 0 to 3,000 units in 2 years. Like, yeah, but maybe you go 0 to 3,000 in 10 years and you own 100% of it. That's better than owning like 1 to 5%. So there's nothing wrong with scaling slowly. No, remember that. Next, a deal is rarely worth the asking price, right? Now, that's not to say you can't buy it for the asking price or a little below. You still make a deal work, right? It just isn't worth that. A lot of times, especially in this market, we've seen is sellers, they obviously want to maximize what they can get. Nothing wrong with that. As a seller, I would do the same thing. And often they want you to pay them for some of the work that hasn't been done that you're about to do. That's been happening a lot lately, especially these value add deals. They'll say like, oh yeah, only 20% of the building has been, renovated. You could do the remaining 80%, but they're pricing it as if you've, that work, some of that work, that 80% work's already done. More that they're pricing as if there's only, 60, 50% left to do. And so often it's not worth what it's asking for. Just know that. Next, know your loan terms. This is a big one, especially we've seen this recently. I'm sure I've talked about it on an episode in the past. The deal in Houston that was foreclosed on over 3,000 units. That was for a multitude of reasons, but you got to know your loan terms, and that was part of it. They didn't know loan terms. There's terms in there where, you can be called on the loan, right? And it surprised me when I heard a bunch of people didn't understand. They said, when you get a bridge loan, let me back up here. When you get a bridge loan, sometimes it'll be like a 2 + 1 + 1, right? So you get 2 years, and then you have the option to renew another year. And then after that, you have an option. After that year, you have another option to renew for another year. And a lot of people thought that meant, okay, it's my option. I get to decide as the owner operator. I get to decide after that first 2 years that I want to add a year or not. No, it's both of your options. You both have to agree on it. You, the owner operator, and the lender. And if you're in a dire strait, which a lot of people had with rising interest rates because those bridge loans were floating, and you didn't turn the properties quick enough and didn't get occupancy and rent growth to where it needed to be to cover, these lenders would be like, no, we're not renewing. This is not a good loan anymore. It's not a good, investment for us anymore. A lot of people didn't know that, which just blew my mind, just because that, to me, that's just commonplace. That's just obvious, right? But that just shows you need to know your loan terms. And there's more terms than that. That's just an example, but you need to know your loan terms, because if you don't, they could call you on it. And that goes to building relationships. Build relationships with your lenders. Sometimes it's more important to maybe not get the best rate in terms, but to go with someone who you're building a relationship with versus, I don't know, this guy over here. I don't know Jim over here, but he's giving me the best interest rate in terms, so I'm going to go with him. Well, then you get in a bad position. Maybe they sell your loan to someone else, and then that new person just says, see you later. Right. Or they don't even sell them. They just say, see you later. Right. And they call the loan. But if you build a relationship, especially with more local regional banks, or just building a relationship in general, they will often go to bat for you and fight for you to try to make it work. Now, that's not all the time, right? There'll be times where they're going to look out for themselves too. But I would emphasize that. So guys, that's the show today. This is just some high level, just quick things I thought of that I've learned over my career buying over $50 million of real estate. And I hope that can help you. Again, either not make some mistakes others have made in the past, or just reaffirm the decisions you currently are making. This is a great game, great business. That's what it is. It's a business, right? Buying each property is a business, and it's fun. You can make good money. You can make good returns for your investors. You can meet a lot of great people, and it's an interesting time right now. It's tough, right? You got to take more hacks, take more swings so you can get that hit, but just stick with it. I think opportunities are going to come next 12, 24 months. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you when, but there's a lot of stress in the market. There's a lot of cracks that are going to widen, but overall the fundamentals of housing are still strong. That's not to say that there won't be a correction in pricing. I think there will, but the fundamentals are so strong to make sound investments. And if you can get at a better price, let's do it, right? All right, buddy. As always, thanks for tuning in. Easy doesn't pay well, and instant gratification is self-destructive. So not only get out there and work hard for your money, but have your money work hard for you, so we can all create the lives of our dreams. And through personal excellence, we can make this world a better place. All right, everybody, catch you on the next one.
Hey, this is Shawn Winslow. After being in the financial service industry for years and having candid conversations with good people just like you, I realized that so many of us are wanting an investment strategy that provides solid returns and consistent income without the bumps in the road. There's little known secret that your financial advisor doesn't want you to know. There is investment out there that is less volatile and the returns are stronger. Get more details by going to greenbriercg.com and clicking on the free e-report. And by the way, if this show has provided you any value, then feel free to leave an honest written review and of course share it with a friend who needs it. See you next week for another great show.